Rich millionaire slaps his pregnant wife in public in front of Mistress, but he didn't know. They called him the Golden Lion of high society, Alexander Carlyle, a self-made millionaire with immaculate suits, a gilded penthouse, and a pregnant wife beloved by all. Yet behind the glossy front-page photos and glamorous charity events lurked a festering secret. Whispers spoke of another woman, a mistress whose allure threatened to fracture the fairy tale marriage. But no one could have guessed the explosive confrontation that would play out in public, nor the terrifying moment when Alexander's anger boiled over, leading him to do the unthinkable. Little did he know, his wife was harboring a shocking secret that would shatter everything he believed he controlled. Alexander Carlyle was the epitome of what the American dream promised. Born in a struggling neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, he scraped and hustled his way to the top with relentless ambition. By his mid-30s, he owned Carlyle International, a conglomerate spanning tech startups, luxury hotels, and philanthropic initiatives. People admired his handsome smile, reminiscent of a movie star, and envied the gilded life he led. Every morning, Alexander's personal chauffeur dropped him off at a 50-story skyscraper in Manhattan, bearing his company's name. There, employees whispered about his near-legendary work ethic. He would arrive before dawn and depart only after the city lights glowed. Polished, confident, and always in command, Alexander had the Midas touch every venture. He backed seemed to flourish. The media adored him, portraying him as both a visionary mogul and a romantic husband. His wife, Veronica Carlyle nee Harrington, was the poised daughter of real estate mogul Robert Harrington. Their marriage, 2 years earlier, had been a lavish affair at the historic Plaza Hotel, graced by dignitaries, Hollywood stars, and power brokers from across the globe. A polished grace marked Veronica's every move, earning her the affectionate nickname, the Swan, among the social elite. Her philanthropic activities, organizing children's hospital fundraisers, advocating for women's shelters, endeared her to many. When news broke that Veronica was pregnant, the tabloids celebrated this next chapter in the Carlyle fairy tale. Editors clamored for exclusive baby announcements and nursery room reveals. Paparazzi staked out every upscale OB-GYN clinic in Manhattan, hoping to snap the perfect shot of the couple stepping out with ultrasound photos in hand. But even in this glamorous realm, subtle cracks formed. Veronica noticed Alexander's restlessness, his frequent business trips to London that never quite matched Carlyle International's official calendar, or the last-minute cancellations of their private dinner plans. She tried to tell herself it was part of the cost of success. After all, her father had also dedicated long hours to building his empire. She reasoned that Alexander, in his unstoppable drive, might simply be overburdened. Yet, an undercurrent of tension coursed through their life. Subtle changes in Alexander's demeanor, quicker temper, distant stares, unspoken resentments made her uneasy. He rarely accompanied her to routine doctor appointments, preferring to send a personal assistant with her, claiming work obligations. She shrugged it off, telling herself she was strong enough to handle this pregnancy alone, if need be. Fate, though, had a way of uprooting illusions. Unknown to Veronica, Alexander harbored secrets. Whispers among employees suggested a mysterious woman had been seen leaving his office after hours. Spotted wearing designer clothes, Valentino, Dior, and stepping into a sleek black car that wasn't Veronica's. The rumor mill churned, but fear of Alexander's wrath kept many employees silent. Oblivious to the storm brewing, Veronica continued her philanthropic work, hands gently resting on her growing belly. She still believed in her husband's love and in the dreamlike life they had built. But as the city bustled beneath skyscrapers bearing their names, destiny was already writing a chapter of betrayal. heartbreak, and unimaginable revelations yet to come. Among the first to sense trouble was Alyssa Hunter, Alexander's longtime personal assistant. A sharp-eyed woman in her late 20s, Alyssa had joined Carlisle International fresh out of college and steadily gained Alexander's trust through her competence. But over the last few months, she'd picked up signals meeting locations that didn't correspond to official business. Floral deliveries sent to a different address, credit card bills that included exorbitant charges for dinners in restaurants Alyssa had never booked. One afternoon, she crossed paths with Veronica in the executive lounge. Veronica looked slightly pale, rubbing her lower back. Pregnancy was taking a toll, but she tried to maintain her signature composure. Alyssa approached hesitantly. "Mrs. Carlyle, how are you feeling?" Veronica offered a subdued smile. "Tired, but that's to be expected, right? Third trimester is no joke." Alyssa nodded, considering whether she should say more. Something in Veronica's eyes pleaded for honesty. If you need help with anything, I'm here," she ventured, keeping her tone deliberately vague. She couldn't risk airing suspicions about Alexander in a corporate setting. Veronica's eyes flickered with gratitude. "Thank you, Alyssa. I'll keep that in mind." The tension remained, intangible but suffocating. That evening, Alyssa found Alexander in his office, rummaging through documents with restless energy. His tie was loosened, and an air of impatience hung about him. "Alyssa," he said, not looking up, "there's a red folder on your desk. Arrange a courier for immediate delivery to the Belmond Hotel. Mark it private and confidential." She blinked. "Sir, did you mean the Carlisle Belmond property in London?" His eyes narrowed. "No," he said tersely. "The Belmond in Midtown Manhattan." Midtown? That was just a short drive from the office. A courier seemed unnecessary, but she nodded, not daring to probe further. Once he left, she carefully checked the address. Sure enough, the recipient was Miss Helena Rousseau at a suite in the Belmond. The name wasn't on Carlisle's standard vendor list or any known business associate. Alyssa felt her gut clench. She sealed the envelope, but her mind whirled. Meanwhile, Veronica's father, Robert Harrington, also harbored concerns. A shrewd businessman himself, he sensed Alexander's recent shift. Deals that once required minimal oversight now came with complicated disclaimers. Robert had tried broaching the topic subtly at a Harrington Foundation dinner. "Son," he'd said, placing a hand on Alexander's shoulder, "I've noticed some unusual expansions in your projects. Are you overextending? Might you need a break, especially with the baby coming?" Alexander had forced a grin. "I appreciate the concern, sir, but everything's under control. Just you wait. I'm on the verge of a breakthrough that will put Carlisle International on the global map like never before." Robert, unconvinced, scanned the room for Veronica. The uneasy flicker in her gaze confirmed his unease. Behind the facade of elegance, something was amiss. But how severe the cracks were, he couldn't know. Whispers swirled, warnings brushed past oblivious ears. And in the heart of Manhattan, a story of betrayal was about to escalate to a climax so shocking that it would leave even the city that never sleeps utterly stunned. Midweek found Alexander slipping into a private elevator at the Belmond Hotel in Midtown. The elevator hummed softly as it ascended to the top floor, where Helena Rousseau awaited him. She was draped in a crimson satin robe when she opened the door, a smoky smile painting her lips. Exotic and willful, Helena was precisely the kind of woman who seemed designed to tempt powerful men. She claimed to be a French art dealer expanding her clientele to Manhattan, but her interactions with Alexander rarely revolved around legitimate business. "Darling," she purred, stepping aside to let him enter the lavish penthouse suite. The room boasted floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline, plush ivory sofas, and a swirl of perfume that clung to the air. Alexander shrugged off his coat, his nerves taut. He had cancelled 2 meetings at the office to be here, a risk that earlier in his career would have been unthinkable. But Helena's pull was magnetic. She possessed an uncanny ability to make him forget his responsibilities, his marriage, even his unborn child. "I can't stay long," he murmured, "but I needed to see you." Her laugh was low and throaty. "I'm flattered. I was beginning to think your wife would keep you on a tighter leash." He stiffened at the mention of Veronica. "Let's not discuss her," he said tersely. Helena raised an eyebrow. "Your call." She leaned in, sliding her arms around his neck. "Anyway, I have a surprise for you." She led him to a side table where a bottle of vintage champagne chilled in a silver bucket. He eyed it, noticing its steep price tag. "You shouldn't have," he said, half grinning. Helena winked. "A toast to our next endeavor. I'll be traveling soon to Europe for an auction. Perhaps we can turn it into a business trip for Carlisle International." Her suggestion hung in the air, implying not just money, but also extended time together in Paris or Rome. Alexander considered it, ignoring the pang of guilt. "We'll see," he muttered. He popped the champagne. They drank, Helena swirling the liquid in her glass, locking eyes with him. In that moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Unbeknownst to Alexander, Helena had her own agenda. She made subtle probes into his finances, his expansions, his connections in high places. She craved the power his name carried, and considered her affair with him a stepping stone to even greater influence. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of her reflection in the hotel mirror and reassured herself that her plan was on track. They spent an hour together before Alexander left, pressing a passionate goodbye on Helena's lips. As he stepped into the hallway, a wave of apprehension washed over him. What if someone saw me? But he forced the thought aside. He was Alexander Carlisle, untouchable. He couldn't have known that very moment. A bellhop named Anthony Rosario recognized him. Anthony had served the Carlisle family at a charity gala last year. He was about to place a phone call that would set in motion the downfall of Alexander's meticulously guarded secret. A downfall that would soon explode into public view, taking Veronica, Helena, and anyone else in his orbit along for the ride. The next evening, Veronica found herself perched on the edge of their penthouse sofa, flipping through magazine clippings of nursery designs. She had selected soft hues of mint green and lavender, aiming for a calming atmosphere for the baby. Alexander, however, had not contributed much, always citing urgent matters at work. When he finally arrived home, the tension in his shoulders was palpable. He walked past the spread of fabric swatches and baby catalogues without so much as a glance. Veronica's heart tightened. She swallowed her disappointment and tried to approach him gently. "Alexander, there's a charity gala next Friday for the Children's Hospital. I'm hosting. Will you be able to attend?" He hardly looked at her, loosening his tie. "I don't know. I might have to be out of town," he said brusquely. She set down the magazine. "Out of town again?" Where this time he shot her a sharp glance. "I have to finalize details on an overseas investment. That's all." His tone signaled the conversation was over. Veronica felt a tremor of anger, but she kept her voice controlled. "You've been traveling a lot lately, London, Chicago, even here in New York hotels. Are you sure all these business trips are necessary?" He whirled to face her, eyes cold. "You're prying. Is that what marriage is now, me having to justify every minute of my day?" She closed her eyes briefly, mustering calm. "It's not prying to want my husband present during our pregnancy. I've been to all these doctor appointments alone, and the baby's going to arrive in a few weeks. Don't you want to be here for us?" Alexander's jaw tensed. A flash of guilt flickered, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "I'm building a future, Veronica. A future that includes this child. Or do you think money just appears out of thin air? If I don't handle these deals, our entire lifestyle could collapse." She felt her chin tremble but refused to cry. "You've changed," she said quietly. "Ever since. I don't even know when, but you've become someone else." He stared at her in silence, a dozen retorts dying on his lips. Then, abruptly, he turned and strode toward his study. He left Veronica standing in the living room, numb from the chilling distance between them. Once in his study, Alexander sank into his leather chair. His reflection in the large window glared back at him, a man grappling with conflicting desires. Helena's mesmerizing pull, Veronica's unwavering devotion, the unborn child he tried not to think about too deeply. He felt cornered, suffocated by demands he had created for himself. While he sat in darkness, Veronica found her phone vibrating. A text from an unknown number appeared. "I have information about your husband. We should talk. Anthony Rosario." Confusion danced across her features. The name wasn't familiar, but the tone was urgent. Something inside her stirred a mix of dread and resolve. She opened the message, her heart pounding. Little did she know, she was about to crack open the walls Alexander had so carefully built around his double life. Early the next morning, Veronica slipped into a quiet cafe downtown. She wore a simple black coat to keep a low profile, a scarf draped loosely to conceal her face. Seated in a corner booth was a young man in a bellhop uniform with the name tag Anthony Rosario. He looked uneasy, stirring his coffee incessantly. When she approached, he stood politely. "Mrs. Carlyle, it's an honor to meet you. Please, just call me Veronica," she murmured, slipping into the booth. Anthony nodded, glancing over his shoulder as if checking for eavesdroppers. "I'm not sure how to say this. I saw your husband at the Belmont Hotel. He visited a suite on the top floor multiple times. I recognized him from the charity gala last year. And he wasn't with you." Veronica's face drained of color. Her chest felt tight, but she forced herself to remain composed. "You're certain it was him?" He sighed, sliding a small phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen, showing her a photo, grainy but unmistakably Alexander, stepping out of the elevator with a glamorous brunette. Veronica pressed a hand to her mouth, her heart hammering. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. She wasn't accusing him, merely seeking clarity. Anthony's gaze flickered with guilt. My mum works in housekeeping at the Belmont, and they treated her poorly once. She's also a fan of yours. She volunteers at the same women's shelter you fund. I felt compelled to do something. You seemed so kind. You should know the truth. This woman, I overheard her say her name is Helena Rosso." Veronica closed her eyes, the name echoing in her mind. The swirl of betrayal, humiliation, and a fierce, maternal protectiveness for her unborn child surged within her. She inhaled, trying to steady herself. "Thank you for telling me. This must not have been easy." Anthony nodded, relief mingling with his concern. "I just hope you can do something about it. You deserve better." Veronica reached into her purse, withdrew an envelope with a discreet sum, and handed it to him. "I appreciate your honesty. Please take this for your trouble." He looked reluctant, but she insisted. After a moment, he accepted it with a grateful nod. Before rising to leave, she touched his arm gently. "You've done me a kindness. Thank you." Outside, the city's bustle felt amplified. Cars honked, pedestrians scurried by, all unaware of the emotional tempest roaring within Veronica's heart. She clutched her coat, each footstep feeling heavier than the last. The image of Alexander with another woman so brazen, so deceitful played on a loop in her mind. Despite the heartbreak threatening to consume her, a flicker of defiance ignited. She was Veronica Carlyle, daughter of Robert Harrington, a woman well-versed in navigating the corridors of power. She thought of the baby, of her father's empire, and her own philanthropic networks. I will not break, she told herself. Instead, she would gather evidence, strategize, and protect her child at all costs. The day after Veronica's clandestine meeting with Anthony Rosario, she arranged an appointment with her father's longtime legal counsel, Margaret Cho. Margaret, a formidable attorney in her late 50s, was known for her no-nonsense approach and her unwavering loyalty to the Harrington family. She greeted Veronica with open arms at a discreet law office near Central Park. "Veronica, darling, come in," Margaret said, concern etched on her face. Once the door closed, Veronica opened her phone gallery to display the damning photographs. Margaret's expression darkened. "This is serious," Margaret stated, flipping through the images. "An affair could be grounds for significant legal action, especially considering the timing with your pregnancy. But are you certain you want to pursue this path?" Veronica gazed at Margaret, recalling the heartbreak that had washed over her every night. "Alexander made vows to me, to our unborn child. He's broken them. I won't be reckless, but I need to protect myself and the baby. I don't know if I want a divorce yet, but I want to know my rights." Margaret nodded, pulling a set of documents from her briefcase. "Your prenuptial agreement has specific clauses, particularly around infidelity, spousal abuse, or desertion. We can gather more evidence and potentially secure financial holdings for you and the child. But, Veronica, remember these fights can get ugly. Are you ready for that?" Veronica's lips pressed tight. "I'm prepared to defend my child's future. I'm not looking to destroy him, but I won't let him or that woman ruin us either." Margaret squeezed her hand in solidarity. "We'll move carefully. Start collecting any proof you can, financial transactions, phone records, sightings. I'll quietly request an audit on Alexander's assets to see if he's diverting funds for this mistress. Once we know the scale, we'll decide the next steps." Veronica left Margaret's office feeling a profound mix of sadness and resolve. She recalled the sense of betrayal clenching her stomach and the spark of anger fueling her determination. She couldn't afford to be naive anymore. Meanwhile, Alexander had no clue his wife was orchestrating a silent retaliation. He was too consumed by Helena's demands for European travel, as well as Veronica's sudden aloofness at home. Their dinners had grown painfully quiet. When he bothered to show up, he might attempt small talk, but Veronica responded with mild politeness that stung more than outright hostility. He considered that maybe she was just exhausted by the pregnancy, or perhaps her philanthropic schedule was too demanding. Helena, on the other hand, had grown bolder. She insisted Alexander attend an upcoming art exhibition at her gallery, an event to flaunt their connection. Alexander balked, claiming he couldn't risk a public outing that might reach gossip columns. Helena pouted, and the tension between them flared as well. The tides were turning, but Alexander remained blind to their direction. He believed he still controlled the narrative, his business empire, his marriage, and his clandestine affair. Soon enough, however, the illusions would shatter. No fortress, however fortified, can withstand the force of betrayal and retribution colliding head-on. The moment the unraveling began was at a charity function Veronica co-chaired for the Harrington Women's Shelter. It took place in the grand ballroom of the street, Regis Hotel, a venue that oozed sophistication with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Everyone who was anyone in Manhattan's elite circles had gathered: politicians, celebrities, and the philanthropic upper crust. Veronica, poised in a flowing emerald gown, greeted guests with a gracious smile that masked the turmoil inside. She spotted her father, Robert Harrington, sipping a martini near the silent auction table, giving her a discreet nod of support. She also noticed Alexander walk in an hour late, wearing his trademark confident smirk, yet his eyes avoided hers. In a strange twist, Helena Rosso was there too. She had secured an invitation by donating a rare painting to the auction. Clad in a shimmering silver dress, Helena commanded attention, her beauty overshadowed only by the tension her presence conjured. Veronica felt her skin prickle upon seeing the woman. She inhaled, determined not to make a scene, but as the evening wore on, guests began to whisper. They noticed Alexander and Helena exchanging glances far too intimate for two alleged acquaintances. Veronica maintained her hostess duties, though each whisper stung like a fresh wound. To make matters worse, Helena seemed determined to flaunt her closeness to Alexander, sidling up to him near the bar, laughing a bit too loudly. Alyssa Hunter, who was present to assist Alexander, noticed the swirling tensions. She approached Veronica subtly, offering a reassuring pat on the arm. "I'm here if you need me," she whispered, but Veronica merely mustered a tight smile. When it was time for the main program, Veronica took to the stage to deliver a speech about women's empowerment and the shelter's work. She spoke eloquently, her voice steady, yet every line about respecting women and providing them safe spaces felt pointed, as though aimed at the man who should have been her rock. Mid-speech, she caught sight of Alexander and Helena whispering in a corner. Rage flared inside, but she pressed on, finishing her address to resounding applause. She stepped off stage, intending to slip backstage to gather her composure. Before she could, Helena brushed past her, elbowing her pregnant belly slightly. It could have been accidental or perhaps not. Startled, Veronica gasped in pain. Alexander, eyes blazing, rushed over but shockingly, not to comfort his wife. "Veronica, watch where you're going," he snapped. To the disbelief of onlookers, Helena smirked from behind him, her painted lips curving in triumph. Tears prickled at Veronica's eyes, but she stood firm. My belly. "You," she stammered, unable to finish her sentence. The humiliation and heartbreak of the moment nearly stole her breath away. All around them, eyes widened, cameras clicked, and hush fell. This was an unveiling Alexander Carlyle's golden veneer cracked in front of Manhattan's elite. For better or worse, the illusions that had held them together were beginning to crumble, and something far more dangerous was rushing in to fill the void. In the aftermath of that tense moment, Veronica rushed off stage, heart pounding. She clutched her stomach, worried about the baby, tears threatening to spill. She needed to find a quiet place to breathe. The grand corridor leading to the lobby seemed her best escape. But as she neared the ornate double doors, she heard hurried footsteps behind her. She spun around, only to see Alexander stalking toward her, his expression twisted with anger. Guests lingered behind, peering from a distance, uncertain whether to intervene. "What was that scene back there?" he demanded, voice low and forceful. Veronica's anger, simmering beneath her shock, finally flared. "Scene? I was giving a speech, raising money for abused and homeless women, while you," her voice quavered, "you were cozying up to that woman. And now you blame me for—" He grabbed her arm. "Keep your voice down," he hissed, though the eyes of Manhattan's elite were already upon them. "You're making a spectacle of yourself." Veronica wrenched her arm away, ignoring the sting of his grip. "It's you who's making the spectacle," she retorted, voice trembling with both fury and hurt. "How dare you show up with her?" He tried to hush her again. "We're in public, Veronica. Don't do this here." Before she could respond, a new presence joined them. Helena Rousseau, with the audacity of someone who believed herself untouchable, glided forward. "Alexander, darling, is everything all right?" She cooed, though her smirk suggested she savored every second of Veronica's distress. Veronica glared at Helena, tears welling in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You have no right to call him darling in front of me," she said, voice steeled with indignation. The attendees, who had edged closer, formed a small crowd, phones held discreetly at their sides or behind their purses. This confrontation was quickly turning into a public spectacle. An uncomfortable hush engulfed the lobby. Robert Harrington appeared behind the throng, horror dawning on his face. He tried pushing through to reach his daughter. Alexander, feeling cornered, lashed out. "Stop acting like a victim, Veronica," he snapped. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the deals I have to make. Helena is—" Whatever he intended to say next was lost in the haze of rage that seized him. Veronica, feeling the slap of his betrayal, retorted, "I understand perfectly. I understand you're a liar and a cheat." In that moment, something primal snapped in him. Alexander's hand flew out, connecting with Veronica's cheek in a sharp, shocking slap. The sound echoed through the marble lobby like a gunshot. Gasps rippled across the assembled onlookers. Cameras flashed, capturing the instant his palm made contact. Veronica staggered, her hand shooting up to her burning cheek. The world seemed to slow, focusing on that single moment of horror. Helena's smug expression gave way to stunned surprise. Robert Harrington finally burst through the crowd, his roar of disbelief filling the space. In that singular act of violence, Alexander Carlyle obliterated whatever was left of his golden image and propelled Veronica into a realm of heartbreak and fury she never thought possible. For a moment, no one moved. The lobby's grand crystal chandeliers seemed to freeze overhead, as if shocked by the violence. Veronica felt her cheek throb, her vision blurring with tears. She cradled her belly protectively, her mind screaming for the safety of her unborn child. Robert Harrington was the first to break the silence. He rushed forward, pushing Alexander aside. "Have you lost your mind?" he bellowed, voice echoing in the marble foyer. "That's my daughter, you worthless excuse for a man." The crowd parted, some guests rushing to Veronica's side, others grappling with the urge to capture the moment on their phones. A security guard hovered uncertainly, unsure whether to intervene in what looked like a domestic altercation turned public scandal. Alexander, his face a mask of fury and shock, realized too late the enormity of what he had done. His chest heaved, adrenaline coursing through him. She provoked me," he began, but the words rang hollow in the hushed throng of horrified onlookers. Veronica drew in a shaky breath, meeting Alexander's gaze with a coldness he had never seen before. Pressing her hand against her stinging cheek, she said in a voice that cut like ice, "You dare lay a hand on me, on your pregnant wife? You've crossed a line no apology can erase." Helena, wide-eyed, sidled away, suddenly very interested in distancing herself from the chaos she had helped ignite. Robert turned on her with fury in his eyes. "And you, whoever you are, don't you dare step near my daughter again," he snarled. She shrank back, grabbing her clutch and disappearing into the crowd that parted for her like the Red Sea. Before Alexander could react, Robert snapped at the security guard, "Call an ambulance. My daughter's pregnant." The guard hastened to comply, but Veronica, fighting tears, straightened her back. "I don't need an ambulance," she said, her voice quavering but resolute. "I just need to get away from him." Robert gently guided her out the door. The paparazzi outside, alerted by the commotion, began snapping furiously. Flashes lit the night, capturing Veronica's tear-streaked face, her trembling figure supported by her livid father. Alexander stumbled after them, desperate to maintain some semblance of control. "Veronica," he shouted, "don't walk away, let's just talk." She turned around, giving him a look of utter disgust. "Don't you dare come near me." Her voice carried the finality of a slammed door. She slipped into the back seat of her father's waiting limousine, Robert following. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped off into the neon-lit Manhattan night. Alexander stood there, alone and disoriented, the cameras still flashing. Within minutes, tabloids and social media would flood with the story. Billionaire Alexander Carlyle slaps pregnant wife at charity event, Mistress involved. Any shred of sympathy or doubt would be buried under the avalanche of condemnation. In that moment, it became painfully clear The perfect empire he had built on wealth and charisma was crumbling before his very eyes. And for Veronica, an internal vow echoed she would never again allow this man to harm her or her child. 2 days after the catastrophic incident, Veronica was ensconced in her father's penthouse on the Upper East Side, shielded from the relentless press by private security. She found herself sequestered in a quiet bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. City lights glittered beyond the glass, but inside, Veronica felt only turmoil. Margaret Cho had arrived earlier that evening, bearing legal documents and a determined expression. Robert Harrington insisted on pressing assault charges against Alexander, or at least filing a restraining order. Veronica was still deciding her course of action, her emotions a storm of betrayal, fury, and heartbreak. As Margaret spoke with Robert in the living room, Veronica's phone buzzed. An unknown number again. Hesitant, she picked up. It was Alyssa Hunter. "Miss S. Carlyle, Veronica, the first so sorry about everything," she began. I had to gather the courage to call. "There's something you need to know." Veronica's heart pounded. "Alyssa, please, just tell me." Alyssa exhaled shakily. "I've been Alexander's assistant for years. I stayed loyal because, well, he was good to me in the past. But after what he did," her voice trembled with disgust, "I can't remain silent. I found a series of emails and documents on his computer about Helena. She's not just a mistress. She's been using him to funnel money into offshore accounts. She claims to be an art dealer, but it looks like a front for an elaborate money laundering scheme." Veronica gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The documents detail huge wire transfers out of Carlyle International's philanthropic funds. Helena apparently convinced him that she'd invest these charitable donations in European expansions. It's all a sham. I fear he was so blinded by infatuation that he never questioned it." Veronica's free hand went to her belly, her mind racing. "Oh, God, this is bigger than just an affair," Alyssa continued. "I'm sending the files to Margaret Cho. She can use them to protect you legally. And there's something else. I overheard Alexander's phone call with Helena last night. He was furious, blaming her for the public scandal. She threatened to expose him if he tried to cut ties. We're talking blackmail, Veronica." Veronica closed her eyes, the weight of the revelation pressing on her. She had suspected Alexander's unfaithfulness, but this criminal twist shocked her to the core. "Alyssa, thank you for telling me. You did the right thing." After hanging up, Veronica summoned Margaret Cho. The attorney listened, her eyes narrowing. "This changes everything," Margaret said. "Alexander's not just facing potential assault charges, he could be implicated in criminal financial misconduct. Helena, too. If you file for divorce, you can use this evidence to secure a substantial settlement and protect your father's name from this scandal." Veronica felt a swirl of anxiety and relief, and something else, a fierce determination. Alexander might have shattered their marriage with betrayal and violence, but she held an unexpected card in her hand, proof of his deeper transgressions. It was time to decide how to wield it. Inside his penthouse, Alexander Carlyle paced like a cornered predator. The aftershocks of his public assault on Veronica had destroyed his reputation overnight. Carlyle International stock plummeted, and board members bombarded him with frantic messages. He'd avoided calls from the media, his father-in-law, and even his own mother, hiding behind locked doors. The only person he had contact with was Helena Rousseau, who was now demanding hush money. Their phone call the previous night had been venomous. "You don't get to walk away from me, Alexander," she'd snarled. "If I go down, I'll take you with me. I have records of every transaction, every wire transfer." He had roared back, "Don't threaten me. I can bury you." But his bravado rang hollow. He was in free fall, and Helena knew it. She had meticulously set him up, feeding his ego while quietly orchestrating her scheme. Now, the hush money she demanded was steep, more than he could easily siphon out without the board noticing. Alone in his disheveled office, Alexander slammed his fist on the desk. Documents scattered, including a tabloid with the headline, "Millionaire Carlyle's Outrage Violence Against Pregnant Wife Exposed." The stark black print sent a shiver of shame through him. A photograph of him in mid-slap dominated the page. In a fit of desperation, he dialed Veronica's old number. Her phone had likely been changed or switched off, because the line went straight to voicemail. He tried Robert Harrington's number next, but it remained unanswered. Even Alyssa Hunter had turned her back on him, leaving him with no allies in Carlyle International's hallways. He felt the fortress of his empire crumbling. Sitting down, he poured himself a generous glass of whiskey, ignoring the early hour. He had never wanted to hurt Veronica physically. He told himself it was a moment of madness, not truly reflective of who he was. But the guilt gnawed at him, fueling nightmares of losing everything: his business, his unborn child, and any semblance of self-respect. An email notification pinged on his phone from Margaret Cho, subject, legal proceedings. He opened it with shaky fingers. As he read the formal language, his face paled. Veronica was seeking a protective order, citing domestic abuse, and an immediate freeze on certain Carlyle International assets pending divorce negotiations. The letter also hinted at potential criminal investigations into fraudulent financial activities. The final line read, "We advise you to respond within 72 hours to avoid an escalated legal approach." Alexander's vision blurred. They know everything. The money laundering scheme, his complicity with Helena, had come to light. A panic unlike any he'd felt before twisted in his chest. He wanted to rage, to blame everyone else, but deep down he knew these wounds were self-inflicted. Staring at the cityscape outside, the same city he once believed he owned, Alexander realized the reckoning had begun. And unless he acted fast, the man once hailed as the golden lion of high society would be reduced to ashes by the flames of his own making. Veronica, on the other hand, felt a strange calm wash over her in Robert Harrington's penthouse. Margaret Cho had just left after a detailed discussion about the next steps. The attorney planned to file for a protective order immediately, ensuring Alexander couldn't approach Veronica or the unborn child without facing legal repercussions. Divorce papers citing domestic violence and adultery were being drafted. The financial probe into Carlyle International's suspicious dealings with Helena Rosso had begun. Sitting by a large window, Veronica found herself absent-mindedly stroking her belly. She was no longer the naive woman who ached to protect a fragile marriage. She had been forced to confront Alexander's deceit in the most brutal way imaginable. Now, a fierce determination shaped her every thought. A knock at the door startled her. Robert entered, his usually stoic face lined with concern. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. Veronica managed a faint smile. "Better than I expected. The bruises are healing, and the baby is fine, according to the doctor's visit this morning." Her father sighed. "I'm relieved, but I know this must be devastating." She nodded, gazing at the skyline. "I never thought I'd be in this position, married to a man who would cheat, then strike me when confronted. But I can't dwell on the pain. I have to do what's right for the baby and me." Robert hesitated before speaking. "There's something you should know. I've placed a call to some of my friends in the DA's office. If Alexander's finances are tied up in illegal activity, there may be criminal charges. And if he tries to claim you provoked him, rest assured we have multiple witness statements from the gala." A trace of relief flickered in Veronica's eyes. "Thank you, Dad. I appreciate you standing by me. Despite everything, I'm still shocked by how quickly our life fell apart. It feels unreal." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders gently. "You're strong, Veronica, stronger than even you realize." You'll get through this. She exhaled, leaning into her father's embrace, recalling how Alexander had once been the charming man who made her laugh. Now, that memory felt like a bitter dream. Over the next few hours, Veronica began organizing her affairs. She wrote personal letters to a handful of close friends, explaining she was safe but needed space. She also made phone calls to philanthropic committees, delegating her responsibilities for upcoming fundraisers. When she reached out to the women's shelter she co-chaired, the staff there extended unwavering support, offering her any assistance she might need. In these small steps, Veronica found renewed purpose. She was no longer defined by her role as Alexander Carlyle's wife. She was a mother-to-be, a philanthropist, and a woman determined to reclaim her dignity. Each rung of the ladder she climbed out of despair was built on her own courage. And she suspected a final showdown with Alexander loomed. Yet she felt no fear now, only readiness. The man who had tried to break her would soon learn that the fiercest storms are weathered by those who refuse to be swept away. 48 hours after Margaret's email landed in his inbox, Alexander stood in front of Robert Harrington's penthouse, flanked by 2 lawyers he'd hastily hired. The building's doorman eyed him warily, aware of the scandal that had gripped the city. Yet he allowed Alexander in, noting the meeting had been scheduled through Margaret Cho's firm. Inside a luxurious living room awash in subdued lamplight, Margaret, Robert, and Veronica awaited. Veronica was seated on a velvet couch, posture regal despite her advanced pregnancy. Her bruised cheek had faded to a faint yellowish mark, but the memory of Alexander's slap burned bright in her eyes. Alexander's lawyers offered rushed greetings, exuding tense politeness. Margaret's tone was crisp as she led them to a dining table strewn with documents. We're here to finalize the protective order's terms, discuss the pending divorce, and address the allegations of financial misconduct. Alexander's jaw clenched. Allegations, he repeated bitterly. Not proven. Margaret tapped a folder. These are records from Carlyle International's accounts, showing money funneled into Helena Rosso's shell companies. We also have her bank statements linking that money to offshores in the Caymans. It won't take a jury long to see the truth. His face reddened. I was misled. She told me it was for expansions in Europe. Veronica spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly calm. And you took funds from philanthropic accounts, Alexander. Money meant to do good. All for her, or for your ego. Alexander's gaze shifted to her. Something resembling regret flickered in his eyes. Veronica, you have to believe I never wanted to harm you. She stared back, unyielding. Yet you did. His lawyers attempted to salvage control. We propose a private settlement and a gag order. In return, Mr. Carlyle will cede a percentage of assets. Veronica held up a hand. No. Her voice was firm. You lost the right to hush this up. I've already filed for divorce. There will be no secrecy. Women, especially pregnant women, need to see that abusers don't get to hide behind money. Alexander's shoulders slumped. He looked utterly defeated. So, this is it? Veronica inhaled, summoning her courage. There's one more thing you should know. You accused me of provoking you. You tried to justify hitting me, but I have a secret one that changes everything. She glanced at her father, who nodded, prompting her to proceed. A hush fell over the room. Veronica squared her shoulders, her voice quiet but resonant. Alexander, the baby I'm carrying, has a significant medical condition. I only learned about it after a recent test. It'll require specialized care after birth, possibly surgeries. Tears slid down her cheeks. All the money you've squandered on Helena, that's money our child desperately needs. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed our baby's chance at a healthy life. Alexander paled, his eyes darting to her belly. I didn't know, he whispered, shock contorting his features. He stumbled backward, comprehending the weight of his actions in an entirely new way. Silence reigned. Margaret's glare said it all. Any sympathy the courts might have had for him would be obliterated by this revelation. And for Veronica, a potent sense of closure bloomed. The truth was out her heartbreak, her child's struggle, Alexander's callous greed. No matter what came next, she had laid bare the reality he had so violently tried to deny. In the weeks that followed, the legal fallout was swift and thorough. Veronica's attorneys used every piece of evidence Alyssa Hunter provided, demonstrating Alexander's involvement in Helena's fraudulent schemes. Simultaneously, the district attorney's office began investigating potential criminal charges. Helena Rousseau, realizing her game was up, fled the country, leaving Alexander to face the consequences alone. Carlyle International's board of directors voted Alexander out as CEO. The brand's once shining reputation lay in tatters, its stock prices in free fall. A civil lawsuit awaited him from Veronica, demanding damages for assault and the misappropriation of philanthropic funds. Public sympathy rallied around the pregnant wife, left battered by a man who once held Manhattan in awe. Yet, through the chaos, Veronica found rays of hope. She moved forward with plans to ensure her unborn child received the best possible medical care. Her father's network of specialists and donors quickly mobilized, raising funds and awareness for conditions similar to what her baby faced. Veronica stood at the forefront of this movement, channeling her heartbreak into a cause that resonated deeply with parents around the world. Robert Harrington watched his daughter with pride. Gone was the quiet, unobtrusive socialite. In her place stood a woman of resilience, determination, and unbreakable courage. Together, they redesigned a portion of the Harrington Foundation to focus on pediatric care, naming it after Veronica's yet-to-be-born child. On a crisp autumn morning, Veronica gave birth to a baby boy. Though the child needed immediate intervention to address his medical condition, doctors remained optimistic. Margaret Cho visited Veronica in the hospital, handing her a final set of documents that concluded the divorce proceedings. A judge had ruled in her favor, granting her full custody and freezing Alexander's personal assets until the criminal investigation concluded. Standing over the newborn in a transparent hospital bassinet, Veronica signed her name. After recovering, she was wheeled out of the hospital. Photographers lurked nearby, but security kept them at a distance. Instead of hiding her face, Veronica held her tiny son in her arms, letting the cameras see her strength and serenity. The headlines in the next day's papers read, "Veronica Carlyle leaves hospital, triumphant child safe after medical intervention." A stark contrast to Alexander's downward spiral. Some days later, a subdued Alyssa Hunter visited Veronica's father's penthouse. The assistant apologized for not speaking sooner, though Veronica only thanked her for ultimately coming forward. Alyssa presented baby gifts from the Carlyle International staff, most of whom had turned their backs on Alexander's tyranny. It brought Veronica a small sense of closure. As for Alexander, he faced a daunting future court cases, financial ruin, and the loneliness of a man who realized too late the cost of his choices. Helena never returned to claim him, having milked him for all he was worth. The city, once enthralled by his grand persona, now whispered his name only in the context of scandal and regret. Veronica, however, walked into a new beginning. With her son in her arms and her father by her side, she stepped onto the path of motherhood and advocacy, her scars a testament to her survival. She was no longer a victim, but a warrior, a woman who had reclaimed her life's narrative and ensured her son's future would be built on love, not deceit. And so the story of Alexander Carlyle and Veronica Harrington comes to its pivotal end, one marred by betrayal, violence, and the weight of unchecked ambition. Yet, from the rubble of a once glamorous marriage rose a stronger, more resilient woman, determined to secure her child's future and champion the rights of those who've been wronged. Veronica's calm but resolute stance sent a powerful message. True strength lies in standing up against abuse, defying the odds, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. As Alexander faces the repercussions of his own downfall, Veronica steps forward with the courage born of heartbreak and the unconditional love of a mother. If this tale moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you riveting stories of redemption, courage, and the triumph of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.